misconceptions.
Welcome to another retro shelf video. This is one of the books I got for my birthday in November 2022. Once Upon Atari, How I Made History by Killing an Industry by Howard Scott Warshaw. Forward by Ernest Cline, author of Ready Player One. And I've been familiar with Howard's writing for a while through his columns in Games TM Retro, Retro Gamer and Wireframe magazine. And so I was interested to read his story in his words. An intimate view into the dramatic rise and fall of the early video game industry and how it shaped the life of one of its key players. The book offers eye-opening details and insights delivered in a creative style that mirrors the industry it reveals. An innovative work from one of the industry's original innovators. So, you may be aware of Howard as the creator of the best-selling Yars' Revenge and Raiders of the Lost Ark for Atari 2600, and of course he's gone down in history for creating E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. And part of the book and part of the story in how he tells it is how he found himself in the desert in Mojave digging up old video game cartridges. The myth was that E.T. had done so badly that Atari had buried millions of cartridges. And so we go back to the beginnings of Howard's story, how he went to university, how he found his way to Atari, and Howard tells the whole thing in quite an interesting way, jumping backwards and forwards. Looking at here, he's looking for his first assignment, Yars' Revenge, talking about some of the people he met at Atari, and also the culture at Atari, which is an important part of both how the company was so creative and then ultimately when it changed, how it became less popular. Here we have, for example, a meeting at Atari and everyone is wearing How Weird, Howard's name, t-shirts. And this birthday was pretty significant because it was the same week as Howard accepted the commission to write E.T. in just 5 weeks. And he does talk about the pressures of facing that deadline. Here he's talking about 3 Christmases, or Christmas as he christens it, how the changing attitude to bonuses and the people that left Atari to form iMagic and Activision affected not only his pay but his future at the company. So he talks a lot about working on the game. There's not a lot of technical detail. If you're expecting a how you did it, it's not. It's more about the creative environment and where things went wrong. Of course, he does talk about many of the issues surrounding Atari, the use of drugs, the brainstorming, and then the corporate side of it, the pressure, how people believe their own marketing, that sort of thing. Great shot here of one of the diggers at the site. The whole dig was filmed for a documentary, and again Howard goes into some detail about how that came about and how he wanted to tell his story. And we go through, there's Howard again, the artist room, Atari, talking about finally finishing the project. Now he nearly crashed his car a couple of times because he wasn't paying attention. He's working at home with a system and not going into Atari as much. There's Howard with Stephen. On that day he actually gave Steven Spielberg personalised cartridges of Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. And then the aftermath of E.T. And as he says, at the time, it wasn't considered a bad game. He even got to attend the UK premiere of the film. What happened is that years later, people took a different attitude. There's Ernest Cline and Zach Penn who filmed the documentary. I found this little table very interesting. It compares how long he took on a game to how much attention it now gets and how he ranks it in terms of that. So E.T., which only took 5 weeks to produce to beat the Christmas deadline, gets the most attention. He ranks it his 3rd best game. Yars' Revenge took 5 months to develop, gets the 2nd most attention, but he ranks it his favourite game. It's one of my favourite games. Raiders of the Lost Ark took 10 months is neglected, less well remembered. Has a very clever control scheme using both joysticks, but he ranks it his second best game. And then Saboteur, his fourth and final game at Atari, was unfortunately unreleased, was in development for 14 months back then, and was finally only released 20 years later on the Atari Flashback console. So he talks about what was wrong with ET, what was wrong at Atari, talks about, there was talking about Saboteur and how things were going wrong, how he went through all the interviews for the movie, talking about his relationship with management, saying goodbye to Atari, and then how he took the unusual journey after a spell at 3DO to become a therapist. And there we have one of the cartridges they dug up. Of course, the myth was that it was millions of cartridges in the desert. The truth is there were thousands, but not just ET, other games, other returns. So although ET as a whole sold a lot of cartridges, the final sales figures, minus returns, about 1.5 million copies, and a fair few of those did make it into the landfill. So, as I say, it's a very interesting story. It's told in a very entertaining way, moving backwards and forwards in time between Howard at Atari and Howard at the Dig, and I can thoroughly recommend it to anyone who's interested in Atari, the VCS, the games industry crash of 1983, which, although it had less impact in the UK, did have a significant effect on the industry. Here we were more into the home computers than the consoles, and it took longer for consoles like the NES and Master System to gain a foothold again, but definitely worth checking out if you have any interest in Howard, his games, and the story of the software industry. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoy this book from the Retro Shelf, and comment below, what was your favourite Atari 2600 game? What did you think of ET? Have you ever played it? Have you played the bug fix version? If you can, share this, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, like it below, and I'll see you in the next video.